retired Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, a former IDF spokesperson, senior fellow at Foundation for Defence of Democracies and the co-founder of Bottom Line Media. Thank you for joining us, Jonathan. How worried are you by the UN saying that nearly a third of people in Gaza are going days without eating?
Yes, good day. Thank you for having me on. Frankly, these days, as an Israeli, whenever I hear statements made by anything that has a UN attached to it and it relates to Israel or Gaza, sadly, I don't attach a lot of credibility to those statements. I personally have heard allegations and alarm bells about famine in Gaza for the last year and a half, and therefore I think that they are more politically motivated than factually based.
In which
and
case...
therefore, I am not concerned about UN statements.
Okay,
I am, however, concerned.
In that case, Jonathan, just if we leave aside the UN statement then, on Friday, Germany, France and the UK called on Israel to immediately lift restrictions on the flow of aid and for an end to, their words, the humanitarian catastrophe that we are witnessing in Gaza. That's not from the UN, that's from Germany, France and the UK.
Indeed, and that is indeed very worrying. I think that statement and the previous statement of 27 countries that said something similar, and the French future recognition of a Palestinian state, I think those statements cost Israel the ability to reach a ceasefire. They hardened the bargaining position of Hamas, and Hamas understands, and I think quite correctly from their point of view, that they have Western support, that they've been able to fool Western governments with a massive propaganda campaign that is ongoing as we speak. And what that means is that Hamas saw the situation and said, well, let's go for higher
Jonathan,
and harder.
Can I just ask you something on what you said there? Why do you feel that countries such as Germany, France and the UK expressing concern for a humanitarian catastrophe is the same as supporting Hamas? I mean, this is concern for civilians who are starving.
Yes, because the bottom line is what matters, and the bottom line is that, in my mind, the concern is justified, and the concern for civilians, women, children, elderly is justified, and as a human being, I am concerned about them as well, even though they support my enemy.
So
However,
what do you think needs to be done then, Jonathan?
Hold on, but let me just complete the answer. However, the issue here is who bears responsibility for the situation. In my mind, when countries blame Israel and put pressure on Israel about the situation, they are doing Hamas a service and they are doing Palestinian civilians a disservice. Because let's be honest about this. The situation in Gaza is Hamas's doing. It cannot be undone by anybody but Hamas.
Israel has a duty under international law to ensure that aid gets to civilians.
The war won't end until Hamas is defeated. There might be a ceasefire. I hope there is one, because I want to see Israeli hostages return to their families. But at the end of the day, after a ceasefire, we will unfortunately have to go back to war, because that is what the other side wants. And I think it's tremendously dishonest and frank and really unhelpful for governments around the world to be piling pressure on Israel when they're not acknowledging the situation of who it is we have on the other side. Hamas is committed to destroying Israel.
If I just go back to what I wanted to ask you earlier, what do you think needs to be done then to ensure Israel gets enough aid to civilians?
So, first order of business would be to demand of UN and other affiliated organizations to stop boycotting Israeli humanitarian efforts and to start working with Israel. I think missing from the very long and elaborate and emotional piece, very biased piece that Jeremy just showed, was the part that the UN has been refusing to cooperate with Israel.
Why do you think there were images of skeletal children?
Explain.
How is that biased?
Why? Because they're cherry-picked, and a very important part of the story wasn't covered, and that is that there are about 900 truckloads of goods, of food, fuel, and even baby formula that have been delivered to Gaza.
How does one
So
explain
if you let me without interrupting, I will explain. And the images that your editor chose not to show, and the information that your editors chose not to give to viewers around the world, is that there were more than 950 truckloads of food waiting for UN organizations to distribute them.
What's the explanation, Jonathan, for the images of skeletal children then? If there's enough aid going through, why are
that surely is one part of the explanation. If food is delivered to the Gaza Strip, but UN organizations motivated by political ideas and motivated by their alliance with Hamas are refusing to distribute food that's already in the Gaza Strip, then that surely is part of the problem. And I'm not saying that the situation is perfect on Israel's side. I've been criticizing in Israeli media.
And of course, the food now is being distributed by an Israeli and a US-backed organization and not the UN.
Not only that food, after Israel forced UN organizations to do so by exposing it to the media and by showing hundreds and hundreds of pallets of food standing in the Gaza sun and waiting to be picked up by UN organizations that have been boycotting Israel for it. Now they're finally starting to distribute it, and they're distributing it through their regular channels, which, by the way, isn't very good, because those channels, some of them, almost all of them, are contaminated with Hamas operatives, and Hamas uses the international humanitarian aid as leverage over the population. And the sad, cynical fact is that the Gazan population, which you rightly show the suffering, you show the children and the women and the elderly, and yes, there is indeed legitimate suffering, which is regrettable, but it is not Israel's blame. The organization that is to be blamed for everything happening in Gaza since October 7 and since they took power in 2007 is Hamas.
Jonathan,
they are accountable for their decisions. They are the ones who attacked Israel.
Jonathan, thank you very much for your time. Jonathan Conricus.